Okay, so let me walk you through how to do this work of the coding challenge. And then when you're at the end, follow along, update your code if you need. And if you did, say updated my code. Or if you didn't, just say my code worked. You can add something to where you get a commit, right? You could put a comment or something. So you do need to add something in here. I'll probably have you add something as we go through it. Oh, wrong file. All right, let me move over to VS Code here, right? So now what we're going to do is update, right? Refactor, right? So at this point, I'm going to get rid of this. I no longer need it. I am going to call this, but now I'm going to define, right, house size PTS equal, right? So that's the first thing, is I haven't changed anything about the function, but I'm going to declare inside of the block scope a new variable that will be the result of calling this function, determine house size points, and passing AP to it. So now let's come up here, right? So it's still size that I'm passing to it, but in this case, I need to, do you remember, declare let, and here's where I want to come up with a better name. I've called it house, call it house size, and all points, just to show it could be the same. And that's a really important thing to understand here, is it could be the same because when I'm defining it here, it is inside of this scope, so I could absolutely have the same name down here. I'm just keeping it different so it doesn't hopefully get confusing. Okay, so I'm going to declare the variable inside of the function, and now, as you saw me do before, I'm going to say, right, house size points equals, okay, 10. Because again, I'm setting this variable, and actually I'm going to make it a little easier. I'm just going to copy that here, here, and here. It's always easier when you watch somebody else do it, right? That's a point of learning to code, though, is you try something, and then if you can't get it, you watch somebody else do it. Now, what do I need to do here? Now that I've determined, again, I'm not calculating, I'm determining it based on my conditional logic, what that house size points is, I'd say return house size points. And when it returns, it is stored in this new declared variable. Right, so and this is important to understand that this runs first. Like when you look at the way JavaScript executes code, it's going to call this function, right? Now what comes back if I did apartment, now this is not, I'm just giving you kind of the way, and actually I should give you this website. I think I'll do that. It's called Visualizing JavaScript, so you can see what it's doing. Okay. But that's also what DevTools does, but in this case there's another step it could show you, which is when you call this function and you pass, right, apartment to it, it sets that value to 2 and then it returns it. And so ultimately in this case what happens is once it runs that, then that value becomes 2, and that's what sets, declares, and assigns that value to 2. I'm going to undo it. I was just showing you for purposes here. Okay? Okay, last thing we're going to do, right? Console.log for now. Right? And I'm going to do total points carbon footprint score so far. Oh, so far, right? And then we're going to actually have a new variable that we have not set up yet. It's going to be called total. Okay, so now what we can do is come up here and we could say, right, total is going to be equal to what? Household points plus house size points. Oh, duh. Easy for you to say real. Okay. So do you see what I did here? So now let's go look at it. Let's go actually walk through it real quick. Right? Over here. Good. Right? So what we've seen here is the idea of scope. We've seen the idea of function. We've seen the idea of returning values from a function. We could also have functions that call other functions, which is something we'll get into as we get more involved with our code. But you could absolutely, instead of having it return here, you could just have this function call. You could have determine household call the next one. Okay? But for now, I think this is hopefully a good start. All right, so at this point, if you update your code, right, or have my code worked. Now, by the way, if your code worked, even if it didn't, make sure you get this total in here, right? And then at this point, what we've achieved is we have functions. We have no global variables. We have some global just console.logs, which we could get rid of, but we only use those to show you what was happening in here. And probably the thing I'd want to do is actually write a function, and I might do that as part of the discussion this week, is actually write a function to output to the page. Because right at this point, we haven't been yet doing that, and it's time we got back to the browser because it's an important part of what we're doing. All right, what you can do here, let's go back, right? Depending on what you coded. If you already had working code and you just added the total, just put my code worked or updated my code and then commit that and then give me your commit history, and then we'll move on to the next one.